This is the Ridiculously Amazing Insurance Agent Podcast, hosted by me, Kelly Donahue Pirro. This show is for growing insurance agencies looking to maximize their biggest investment, their people. Listen to the top agency performance partners clients share their story on how they boosted their performance by executing a plan. Let's head to the show.
All right. Hi, everyone. I am so grateful to be here today with a longstanding client, pretty much gone through almost all of our programs at this point. Webb Insurance, we have Randy Webb, and we have the right-hand leading lady, Marrissa, with us today. And so they're going to talk a little bit about what they've been going through, what's going on at the agency, and some of the things they're up to. So good to see you guys, even though I just saw you 2 days ago.
Great to see you again today, Kelly.
Yes, it's been a good week with Kelly.
Yeah, just a full transparency. We were just there doing the second half of time management this week. So I pretty much left and then came to the podcast with you guys. But why don't we start and maybe Randy kind of just going through a little bit about who Webb Insurance Agency is, how'd you get started, what's the background, how we get to where we are today.
Well, I got into the insurance business in 1998 as a captive agent with Oklahoma Farm Bureau. Worked there, did pretty good for 14 years, and then they started, they had some financial problems, Oklahoma weather, obviously, so they really cut back on what we could actually do. We weren't writing much new business, so it was time. I couldn't really do that because I'm somebody that we got to be moving forward. If we're in neutral, we're moving backward. So my wife Christy and I started Webb Insurance, and we started out as she was a school teacher, and so she came in and helped after school, and so pretty much a 1.5 man shop, and that was in May of 2012. So we've grown now from that to where there's 8 of us all together, plus a couple of part-time outside producers. So, we're from this area, so it was a pretty natural market for us. And we've grown really pretty rapidly once Marrissa came on board. So she was a big help to help us get in and grow the agency sales wise. And she had come from no real insurance experience, which I'll let her tell you that, but that's kind of how we got started.
And just let me ask you, are you personal, commercial lines? What's kind of the split that you have?
So my background was personal lines. So the agency is about 85% personal lines, 15% commercial lines.
Excellent. I know you referenced you're in Oklahoma. So for those of you who don't know, they're in Grove, Oklahoma, a lovely area. And you indicated weather, of course. You guys get, I think, all the weather, right? There's nothing you're immune to other than maybe a hurricane.
Yeah, we get all the weather in about 1 week.
Wildfires, blizzards, tornadoes, hail,
Flash floods,
earthquakes, you name it, we have it.
Yes.
Oklahoma is a place to go for weather action, it sounds like. So,
Yes.
well, that was Randy's story. Marrissa, would you like to share your story?
Well, I moved down to Oklahoma, when I was about 22, and met my now husband, and we moved over to the Grove area, bought a house, and I was kind of in between jobs, really trying to find that niche for me. I had never done any kind of sales. I never even thought about doing sales. And then I applied at Randy's office, and him and Christy interviewed me a few times. They actually did not hire me. They did not.
You just told me that this past week. I was like, what?
they passed on me that first time in July of 5 years ago. So 2016, they gave me a call and asked if I would like to come in. And at that time, I was right in between figuring a lot of stuff out. And so, yeah, I started as the receptionist, and Christy was doing all of the commercial and farms. Randy was doing all of the just straight personal lines. And I came in as the receptionist, and from there, here we are.
if you can describe your role a little bit, maybe how Randy, and then maybe this question for Randy or Marissa, but like what is Marissa's role? What do you do, Randy? Like, how do you organize everything in the agency now?
So really, Marissa is the engine that drives the car here for the most part. I mean, I am here. We went from being, and we'll talk about this in a little bit, but we went from being one person that could sell insurance to now we have 7. So Marissa kind of took charge of that, or took that role and ran with it. So I do very little selling of insurance now. I basically manage the agency. Christy does the book work. I deal with sales reps, problem calls, claims, issues, marketing, all of the out front stuff. So Marissa, I'll let her describe her role in the agency for you.
Well, and I'll say this too. I've seen Marissa's role develop a lot even over the last year or two. So I'm curious to see what Marissa has to say.
When I started, I was just the receptionist up front, and then I kind of jumped into trying to problem solve versus having to go back to them. It was more of like I wanted to make sure that whatever they were doing, they could do without being interrupted. And now that we have grown, my normal stuff that I do is I do a lot of selling, obviously, selling and making sure that all of the girls are on track, making sure that if they get behind that they aren't afraid to raise their hand, checking on their stuff, making sure that reports are done and numbers look good and we're not missing things that we shouldn't be missing. So I have a plaque on my desk that just says chaos coordinator, and that pretty much rounds it all out. Like I coordinate the chaos.
Well, I think everybody needs a chaos coordinator, and that sounds better than operations manager. I like that title. It sounds a lot more fun anyway.
Yes.
So what, probably 3 years ago is when we all first kind of met.
Yes, that's when Randy had seen you guys at Elevate.
Correct.
In Cleveland, I believe, is where we met you guys at.
Yeah, and gosh, it seems like so long ago. COVID puts like a black hole in my brain of like when things happen. So you're sitting there, and I think at that time the agency did not have 7 or 8 people, right? It was
4.
Yeah.
So you guys really in 3 years have exploded and kind of doubled in size. So you're sitting there and you're thinking, man, what was kind of the trigger that said, hey, I think we need some help in these areas? Like what were the business problems maybe you were struggling with?
So in my mind, I really wanted to scale the agency up. And so whenever I sat through your talk at Elevate and you came in and started talking about processes, the things that you could do to come in and increase efficiency, that you could come in and teach sales to people. So when we were sitting there in that meeting, Marissa was doing some selling at that. Well, she was selling.
The year before that is when I had started selling, but that year was when I was actually like, all right, this is my goal. I need to meet my goal. So we had just kind of put that on the table. And
so we really only had 2 people in the agency that were selling insurance. And so as I was looking at that, trying to decide how do we grow this agency and how am I going to have time to handle more clients? Mm-hmm. And so, that's what got us to where we talked to you guys down there and you said, hey, we can come in and teach your people how to sell insurance. And that was the starting point right there. So I know you have other programs, but we had people that we hired that really had no sales experience and probably didn't really even, looking back, necessarily want to be a salesperson, but you guys came in and taught them in a very easy, like non-threatening way how to sell people insurance.
Well, and I really think I had been talking to Randy quite a bit at that point about needing structure and needing to stabilize the situation, because it was just like we always felt like we were behind. And if there was a way for us to feel like we were on track, I felt like the stresses, the weight would shift from all of us.
And if I remember correctly too, like as you're going through kind of like the sales training, I think at least from my recollection, so stop me if I'm wrong, my brain doesn't quite work all the time, perfect memory, but kind of starting at square one of like putting in place sales goals and the tracking and some of the bonuses. That was kind of like the first starting point. Am I remembering it correctly?
Yes.
Yeah. And I know everyone in the office was kind of a nervous wreck, and I was like, it's going to be okay, guys.
Yes, actually, I don't think we've ever even told you, but the day before you guys came down that first time, and Randy was kind of going over what was about to happen, all of us at one point were like, we're not gonna be able to do this. This is not possible. Why is he doing this to us? And I think we all held a little bit of a grudge towards Randy for like a good solid week until we got past the fear.
Well, and I know firsthand, I've experienced it, because every time we roll out something new, everyone's like, so it comes back in.
Yes.
So funny story about that. So we had the training on a Tuesday, and I was gone with my youngest son to a baseball game the next day. I had the day off. And so, everybody was stressed out that on Monday, and we sat through the training Tuesday, and they were kind of like, okay, it's going to be maybe okay. When I left, I get like 3 phone calls while I'm watching a baseball game saying, guess what? It worked. We quoted and closed it right over the phone today. So that was, I kind of felt a little better about coming back to work the next day.
It's like the target is not on my back anymore.
Well, I want to ask Marissa a question. Like, so you talk about kind of the fear of like, hey, all this new stuff. Where do you think that comes from? Right? Because
just being comfortable. When I came in, like we said before, it was, Randy and Christy and then myself. And so I kind of I did a lot of winging it. So I felt very comfortable in what I had done and what I figured out and what Christy had told me and Randy had told me. So in my mind, I was like, they're going to change everything. And I'm not going to have any control over my own stuff anymore. So it was very much a comfort thing that we had to get out of.
And then after you built up a little trust and confidence in yourself, like what point did it become easier?
I would say for myself, it became like within the next week, I was like, this makes sense. I don't have a sheet of paper with all the names of people that I need to quote on it, because I'm doing it as I go. And I know that, we have a couple girls in the office that had been kind of working on figuring out how to do sales and quoting and everything. And one of them lacked a lot of confidence going into that first training. And coming out of that, she was like just a different person who felt immensely more confident in herself. And she's pushed her capabilities from doing that. So it definitely was good for all of us.
That's awesome. So I want to talk a bit about the sales training in particular, because we have a kind of a very specific sales process with some boundaries and rules. We like to say of like, hey, these are some things that are, in my opinion, they're like simple, right? Like everybody knows we're big, do not email the quote, and it's like, if you email the quote, you're literally the worst person on the face of the planet. But for a lot of people, it just never dawned on them, maybe like, oh, right. If I email it, then I have to do all this follow up and all the back and forth. And so from the sales training, like what would you say were the key takeaways that maybe you questioned, but then you did them and you're like, that actually was work. Kind of what you had said when you were calling Randy, like this does work.
Like quoting over the phone. Like we had always had quote sheets, like paper quote sheets. So we would always write in like all 7,000 questions. And if we missed a line on that quote sheet, we would have to call them back. Or if we didn't get like the year that the roof was updated, it's a call back. So previous to that, I would say just getting the info took 3-4 times longer because of, having to call back because this carrier has this specific question. Once we started putting it straight through PL through our rater, you don't miss those questions because they're all right in front of you. So it became a lot less of, hey, I'm sorry to bother you. Hey, I'm sorry, I forgot this. So I feel like it made the clients more confident in us. So not only were we becoming more confident, they knew at that time, okay, these people have their stuff together. They don't need anything else. When I talk to them next, it's going to be the discussion of issuing the policy versus they're going to call me 6 more times for more information.
That's awesome. Any other big takeaways from the sales program that you can remember?
I know that within 60 days, we saw a 30% increase in new business. And I mean, we had kind of plateaued. We couldn't get over that next hump. And that process helped us. I mean, 30% is huge. And that we continue to see that growing. So it's not like we just went up 30% and stopped. It's as our staff has gotten in there and become more and more comfortable with it, we're up 20% year over year. So that really helped us take the next step. I know a lot of small agencies have problems hitting a plateau, and we definitely were there before we had you guys come in.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, just seeing the closing ratios of each individual and seeing that helped us in a way that we didn't realize was going to help us, because when we did the sales training, it was about, I'd say a year later, we kind of looked at all of the data that you guys trained us on collecting, and we were able to make decisions then about which CSR should we designate to this thing, and this thing, which ones would be more effective with this, which ones would be more effective with this. So even a year after doing the sales training, we were able to use that data and that information to really elevate each CSR's role and who they take care of and how they take care of them.
Yeah, and I want to say, big kudos to you guys. You have a team that really likes seeing the numbers, likes the goals. And I know that doesn't happen overnight. There's usually a lot of fear and uncertainty and doubt. Like, we're going to see these numbers. What if I don't hit them? I'm not going to feel good. And am I going to get fired? And all the things that happen when you go from maybe not having any metrics to now really going to see these metrics. So you guys can go back in the Wayback Time Machine. Do you have any tips for agencies rolling out metrics for the first time? Because I think it's one of those very overwhelming things that happens, but it's necessary, but you kind of got to outlast the suck of that choppy period in the beginning.
I think you're never going to hit your potential without knowing where you're at. And I mean, we had an agency sales goal when we started, okay, but a monthly goal. And so we were goal oriented, but we didn't necessarily know what areas we needed to go in and adjust to take that goal to another level. And now we can go back and look at that and say, okay, this person's struggling here. Why? And so we can sit down with them, and it's not sit down and beat them over the head about it. Okay. It's more, okay, how can we help you? Because one thing that we really approach it with our staff is, the programs that you guys have come in and done, that's our investment in them to help them reach their potential. And as if they reach their potential, they're going to be happy in their career and they're going to make more money. So, without those metrics, you don't know what you need to do. You may have a goal, but you have no plan to get there.
And sorry, go ahead, Marissa.
Jump in from the employee standpoint versus the boss's standpoint. When we were told like, hey, we're going to track this, and this, it is instantly like, oh crap. How am I going to make sure that everything is where it's supposed to be and how it's supposed to be? And so I think across the board, as far as CSRs go, everyone was worried. Everyone was a little scared. Everyone was like, how are we going to do this? How are we going to keep up? But if I could go back and tell myself that day, anything, it would be to just be open-minded, because I didn't know what my potential was until I was looking at my potential. I can't surpass goals and bust out of the boundaries unless I know what they are. So without knowing what they are, I was just running in circles. Now I run in a line knowing what I'm going to get and how I'm going to get it.
And I think too, from what I see for you guys on the sales goals, it's something you talk about routinely. So I see a lot of agencies say we have a goal, but no one knows what it is, right? Like, what's your goal? We have them, but I don't know what they are. And I'm like, well, then they're not that useful, right? Because if you can't tell me what the goal is or where you stand on it, it means it's not working, right? And so I think all of your team members can almost every day tell you where they stand on their goal.
Yes.
And accountability really helps production. Really helps production. And that's one thing that you guys brought in, is accountability to everyone. And that was where we were struggling. I came as an agent that just had to manage myself to now I own a business. As a captive agency, as a captive agent with Farm Bureau, you weren't really a business owner. You were responsible for yourself.
Right.
And so now, we want to grow this business.
Set expectations.
And the only way to do that is to make everyone else accountable for themselves.
And I think you're right. I mean, you've invested in them too, like by doing our programs. It's not just like, here's your goal, go figure it out.
Right.
Here's your goal, here's your toolkit, but you got to step into that arena and use all of it,
100%.
And I know that, in the history of agencies, like not every team member you have has worked out either. And I think you had clear metrics at that point to say this isn't working.
Correct.
Right.
As opposed to maybe hold on to people a little too long.
And I think prior to doing this, where we have our metrics, we have our plan of action, we have our structure, stability. Prior to this, when we had employees that may not have been reaching the mark, we had no way to actually figure that out. Or we had no way to figure out, okay, this person has been behind for 3 months. We've got to figure out how to fix that if they're going to continue to grow here. So now we have all those tools to make sure that every employee we have is reaching that full potential, or at least on the road to reaching it.
Absolutely. So then we did sales, and then you guys had the crazy idea that you want to call everybody at renewal, or we gave you that crazy idea.
That was Randy's idea.
Well, I do feel like that is a very captive agent thing. Like a lot of times they will train you that, hey, we need to, you need to be very active with your client book of business. And for some reason in independence, we get the whole don't poke the sleeping bear. Like we can't do it. We're always so busy, but, so you guys are sitting there and thinking we got sales down. And now we need to make sure we have a process for retention, right? So how did that whole decision-making process go down? I mean, Marissa totally put the pointing the finger on Randy. So
We had talked about something similar for years. For as long as I've been here, he was like, we've got to figure out a way to do this.
And, I knew you guys could come in and get us on that path. So, we were really looking at retention numbers, and our retention was pretty good. I mean, we were up around in the upper 80s, low 90s. But, you know, I'm really looking at this long term thinking there again, scalability. If you're going to be able to grow and continue to grow, you can't be losing clients out the back door. And so, you know, that's when we brought you guys in and gave everybody the real heart attack. And I know, like you said, that first training on retention is
Scary.
Maybe not the funnest.
That's the hardest one, I think.
Telling everyone they've got to set aside time for this, and I think it took a few months, but then they really started to see the benefits from it.
Yeah, I will say that doing the retention program, out of the 3 that we have done, it was definitely the hardest one to adapt and apply. I mean, we're a year into it and we're still figuring out ways to adapt and apply it in better ways, using the time management program to, you know, accelerate the retention program.
Mm-hmm.
So it was definitely the hardest of the 3, but the benefits have outweighed, obviously, the scary parts, for sure.
Awesome. So we're calling everybody, right? And obviously we have our whole process where you fill a form and all these things. And so, you know, people are very nervous. And what were the top 3 things that were going through your heads at that point in time?
I'll let you answer that.
How am I going to do this was like number 1. Like, how am I going to have time to call all these people and talk to them about all this stuff and still keep ahead on my sales and keep ahead on my personal stuff, like, you know, my servicing that I'm doing for my clients, my emails. I was like, where's this time going to come from? How are they going to give it to us? And then everyone, I think, still kind of had that fear of rejection, even though in the first program that we did, we learned how to overcome the rejections. We all still had that fear that we're going to call and we're going to be like, hi, this is so-and-so from Webb Insurance. And that person is like, what do you want? What do you need from me? Why are you calling? Like that fear was very strong in everyone, for sure. And I can't think of a third one because those 2 are so big and deafening to all of us that those were my big ones for sure.
And my concern is we were doing an awful lot of reshops. And so, and talking to you, you're like, I can show you a way to reduce that. And, you know, while we're reaching out and touching those customers. And in all reality, it saved us time.
Oh, 100%.
I mean,
our reshops have, I would say, decreased 70%. It's very rare that we're doing like an obnoxious amount of reshops. Like it's definitely changed the game for us, which we also can see an increase in our new business from not being bogged down by, you know, 23 reshops this week.
And it's helped our referral business because most of these people have never had an agent that's reached out to them once a year when they're not asking them for money.
That's true. And on the sales side, when we are working with new clients, one of the first questions we ask them is, what has you shopping today? And, you know, I'd say probably 50% of the time, it's going to be something to do with the lack of communication, lack of help. They just want my money. That's all they want from me. So when we are hit with that objection, we're always very quick to remind them that, hey, yearly, we're going to go over this. We're going to make sure that nothing's changed. We're going to make sure you're at the best spot. And that seems to definitely be helping them feel secure with the decision to leave their agency and come to ours.
I think you guys hit the nail on the head. And, you know, I just want to say again what they just said. By calling every client, it has saved them time. So crazy story. You call everybody, it saves you time. but you're not doing the reactive remarketing because someone's upset their rate went up $8. You're like cutting all that out of your lives for sure.
Yes.
And I think, you know, one of the things that Randy did a really good job of during that process too, is really identifying for you guys, hey, we know what, there's some clients that we may not be the best fit for any longer. Right. So
Yes.
ones that might be spending a lot of our time, you know, that it's okay if we kind of, if they move on during the process, and that no one should feel bad about
Definitely.
it.
Definitely. We went from being worried about every client, and even everything from non-standard to those people that unfortunately have terrible records, so they can't even have a car, but they get these SR22s. We definitely, in the process of doing these programs, have stepped away from that non-standard overworked business for sure, and it's definitely helped the momentum of us going forward, because we're not worried about those like we used to be. We're more worried about the clients that understand that we want to make sure that you are taken care of, not just worry that you're going to save $3.
Absolutely. And, you know, I think in the beginning of the renewal call process, right, it's a little choppy. Everybody's trying to figure out their sea legs. How's this all going to work? But you guys now pretty much have it down to a routine science, even on vacation times, like everybody understands. And top secretly, I think they like doing them.
I would agree, especially when they have the time blocks and they're using them effectively. I know that I often hear, well, we only have this one line, why don't we get you that bigger discount? And they started to see that it was a sales call, not just a retention call. And I feel like that's when it changed for everyone.
Absolutely. So we do renewal calls and we're like, cool, we did that. And then I remember Randy being like, and we need time management. Like, I don't even think it was like, I don't even think it was like it wasn't like what does time management look like? It's like, no, we need time management.
Yes.
And you guys had grown
all
so
of us.
much. It was a good time to do it, actually, because hey, there's new people, there's new bodies. It's like, how do we make everybody work together and not be so stressed out all the time, right?
Yes.
And so for this one, this is the most recent one and you're about halfway through, but I'd love to hear, like, you know, because I know Marissa, you kind of said this one's personal, this one's different. Maybe share a little bit about how different is this one from the other components we worked on with you guys.
Well, I know when we started sales, we were all scared of starting sales. When we started renewal calls, we were all scared of doing them. When Randy and Christy laid out for us what the time management would include, there were some parts that were like, oh, that's scary. But overall, each of us in our own individual ways needed it. And we all knew that we needed it. Every single one of us said multiple times throughout the week, I'm behind, I need help with this, I don't know how I'm going to do this, I can't find this, I lost this. And so when this opportunity was brought to us, we all seen it as an opportunity to not only, you know, become more effective and more efficient, we seen it as an opportunity to adapt it to both inside and outside of work. Because if you're not managing your time outside of work, it's being wasted just as well as inside of work.
And let's face it, whoever says that they have too much time?
Not me.
Not even retired people.
No.
And so why, you know, if you can share a little bit, maybe Marissa or Randy, like what are some of the things that your team's kind of nailed down with time management so far?
Keeping that email box clean and free of clutter has probably been a big one.
I have to agree. When we started and Kelly came in, was that on site?
Yeah.
Yes. She said, you're going to empty out your email boxes. And I think everyone's jaws hit the floor all at once. If you looked around the room, everybody's mouth was like one of those cartoons where it's like, ah. And, you know, Randy had emails in his box from 2013, 2012. all the way back to when he had started. And same with me. Randy had like 20,000 emails. I had like 14,000 emails, and clearing those out and starting the day fresh is always a good way to start the day, because I'm not like, oh, I've got 72 emails. How do I find that one? They're all labeled, they're all moved, they're all managed. Getting rid of notepads was huge for us, and sticky notes. That was huge, because Randy and I were the king and queen of notepads. Each of us had like 4 chief tablets, the big ones.
Big chief tablets, yeah.
We used those every day, all day, 6 times a day. And I don't think either of us really went into getting rid of those negatively, because again, we've lost stuff along the way, unfortunately. But having those just out the window made it to where we had to be accountable for making sure our stuff was where it's actually supposed to be.
And then learning how to prioritize. I mean, prioritize your time on, what needs to be done, I think another big thing is asking people, when do you need this by?
Yeah. And then if you could share a little bit about your frog meetings. Because
so every morning, 15 minutes before we open the door, we have a morning meeting. So that has changed since we started time management. So the first thing that we ask is, what's your frog for the day? So what's your biggest thing that you're the least desirable task that you have for the day? And then they go get that done as soon as we finish that meeting. So that puts that to bed. The other thing we ask is, what do you have that you're going to close today? So we kind of, we want to make sure everyone has that sales mindset. What do we have sitting out there that we can go close today? So that's our morning sales meeting.
And if there's like something that we need to discuss as a whole, we throw it in there. We've recently closed our doors for our lunch hour from 12 to 1, which we did once we started the time management, because we realized that spreading out 6 people's lunches over, an hour and a half, and 2 being gone, and who's going, who's leaving, was not time effective.
And no one ever starts or comes back on time.
Never. So now, we close from 12 to 1, and all of our lunches are from 12 to 12:30. And once we come back in at 12:30, we don't open until 1. Instead, we use that 30 minutes to assess what we're going to spend the rest of the day on, identify if we do have any new frogs that have come up that we need to handle, and make sure that our time is going to be used wisely.
And I think that that's amazing. And, another thing that, you guys had this going into time management, right? So if you could share a little bit about like the power hour and the renewal call time blocks, but maybe, and we see this a lot, they weren't maybe held to the same standard you would want them to be, because, people start putting other stuff in there and it gets messy. So could you share a little bit about what time blocks the team has, and then, how you're trying to become stronger at honoring them?
On time blocks for renewal call hours, everyone has an hour a day, and we do those later in the day, after lunch. Prior to time management, I would say one of our staff members was taking that very seriously. She was making sure that she was getting them done and on a timely manner. I would 100% say that no one else was. That was somewhere we definitely struggled with, no matter how many times we conversated about it, no matter how many times we said, why, how can we fix this? It was just one person was really like up there, and then everybody else was like, just, getting by down here. And then they would get behind. And then the more behind they got, the less harder, or the more harder it was to make up all the stuff that they got behind on. And everyone has 2 power hours a week. Those run in the morning hours. Those were not being honored unless it was the end of the month and they really needed to worry about their numbers. And instead of worrying about every week, every day, every sale, it was, I've got 3 days left, I better get on my stuff. Once time management came into play, it, you have told us, Kelly, many times, like, these are important, these need to be, honored, they need to be taken serious. So since we started time management, we have really upped the importance of those and the standard that we expect from our CSRs to make sure that those are done correctly and done when they're supposed to be done.
And I think the time management's going to allow us to expand those power hours as well. It's really, in my opinion, they should spend at least an hour a day on outbound sales calls.
Yeah, and even just 2 weeks ago, Kelly and I had discussed how to make my team's renewal calls more efficient. We came up with a new plan, and these renewal calls were getting done maybe 3 a day. And now we have figured out a new system, a new plan of action, where the girls are getting 10 to 12 done a day, leaving them with 2 additional power hours a week, making their sales, hit that higher bar where it needs to be.
And I remember us talking sometimes, like, a little bit about like the sales roller coaster, right? We have this unbelievable month and the next month's not quite the same, or we're fighting to get the goal. Like, we're scrappy at the end.
Right.
And we were able to kind of tie the idea, like, well, when power hour wasn't held true, that's when you would have your hardest month. So you would ignite it because there was so much in the pipeline trying to get it closed. We'd stop the prospecting, and then the next month we pay for it. And we kind of kept doing that for a few months.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, so honoring that is the insurance policy on your sales goal.
Absolutely.
So we definitely had a few really good months back to back and not had that up and down roller coaster.
Because that's stressful.
Oh.
You got Randy on you, got Marissa on you, everybody's trying to close. I get it, it's hard. So as I kind of wrap up here, I just want to ask one final question, you guys. Like, there's a lot of agencies that are interested in our programs, but what ends up happening is they kind of think, oh, does my team have time for this? Are they going to buy in? Are people going to be upset and walk out because they don't want training or accountability? And, it's all maybe the things that you were thinking in the back of your head that you guys kind of waged through that war. What advice would you give to agency owners thinking about the programs? If looking back, hindsight's 2020, is there anything you would have done differently, or any advice you'd give to somebody?
Well, when we first looked at them being a small agency, I was like, the cost to do them, how quickly can we get a return on our investment?
It's got to work, right?
Yes, it has to work. And I will say this, that in each one of the programs, and we're only halfway through time management, but the first 2 programs, we've seen a return of investment before the program ended. So just in our bump in sales, and our bump in sales this year, and a big bump since we started time management again.
And our retention has greatly improved. We've gotten a lot more good feedback as far as Google reviews or reviews on our website. We've come full circle with the retention program. And if there's anything I can say, as when we came into the APP courses, I was still, I don't even think I was office managing yet. I may have been just started office managing, but coming from there to where I am now, if your team if they want to grow and they want to be a team and they want to be here and make this their career, they will buy it. I am 100% sure Randy was worried about every single one of us from get-go. And every single person on our team that has been a part of these has bought in, has made changes, has seen their potential just burst. Like I said earlier, we had girls that were so nervous about making calls that they would be in tears. They would literally be in tears. And now those same girls are out here killing their sales goals. They're hitting them every month. They're going above their goals. They're setting goals on top of their goals. And they've become just just better employees, better coworkers, better salespeople from doing our APP classes. So if you have a team and you care about them and you feel like they care about your business, they're gonna buy it. It may take a bit. They may be a little rough around the edges at first, but it'll be worth it.
And our staff, we've pretty much steered away from hiring people that had prior insurance experience. We've had that a time or two, and it just has not worked out at all. And so this gave our staff the tools they needed to do their job, and they're much happier. You know, it's not like you said, just tell them, here's your goal, figure it out. They're much happier. We're much happier as owners because, I mean, I can leave for a month and not have to worry about the agency. You know, I don't have to be here to sell.
Yeah, and when I first started, they hadn't taken a day off of work unless it was a government holiday for 3 years.
I mean,
so we came a long way.
We went from having to work 60 hours a week just to keep up to now, I mean, it really freed up. It's a totally different lifestyle.
And I've gotten to see it even just in the past 3 years of seeing Marissa take on more. And I feel like you guys really know when you're hiring, like what you're looking for. You know, like it's super crystal clear, like they're going to fit into this little ecosystem or they're not.
Yeah.
And not really hiring for all this experience, but hiring for like a good fit. And are they teachable? Do they have a good attitude? Like, how can they show up and be a team member?
Yeah.
I think we've come to realize just because they look great on paper doesn't mean they look great in our office. Or just because they've job hopped and they can't figure out where their calling is, doesn't mean we should write them off right away. Because, you know, we have people that have, you know, I started here right after I bounced between about 3 jobs in a year, all office or clerical. And we've got somebody that had worked at the Dollar General down the street, you know, and we've also had another one of our employees who was a waitress. You know, you get all backgrounds. None of that matters. None of it on paper really matters until you get them in front of you and you're like asking them those hard questions and you can see who they are inside for sure. And we've got a heck of a team here.
And we haven't hit 100% of those new hires, but we have become a lot better about, okay, if this is not working, we don't try to continue to make it work. So, you know, that has helped us a lot.
Well, I'll say this, like I get to work with a lot of different agencies, and there's agencies where I look at, like, as I'm leaving to go to the agency, I'm like, I don't want to go there today. Because there's such a strong wall of I'm so busy and this and the excuse game. And I love working with you guys, and like I feel so blessed to be able to, you know, move through those agencies and just say, hey, that was great. No, I can't take you on, you know, have a nice day. But you guys have really done the hard work to get the team, to get everything in place. And I just want to say to every agency out there, if you're listening to this and you're like, I wish my team was excited, I wish my team wanted training, I wish this, like, you have to listen to some of the things Randy and Marissa said. They did the hard work of letting people go and not hiring someone from insurance and training them and investing in their team so that way they can have the agency. You do not have to have an agency culture that you hate walking into every day.
100% agree.
And you know, when you start to see that, you sometimes as an agency owner have to take massive action. You know, because it will literally burn everybody out.
Yeah, we don't do drama. So, I mean, and we tell people when we hire them right up front, our culture is extremely important to us.
Absolutely. Well, I just want to say thank you guys for putting so much trust into us to help, you know, to work with your team. And like I said, you guys are one of my favorites. I love coming out there and working with a team, because it's always fun for me when there's people who are receptive and challenge themselves and say, I did that, and this is what happened. And so I'm really excited to see how we take on the next adventure and, you know, get more and more people into this industry. So I just can't say thank you enough. I really appreciate you guys.
Yeah, we definitely appreciate you, Kelly, and all of the greatness that you have helped us achieve here.
Absolutely.
It's a team effort, guys. All right. Thank you guys so much for being a guest.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you, Kelly.
So what did you think about Randy and Marissa? Impressive, right? And I'll say they have been a pleasure to work with. It's been an awesome experience to help train young women professionals in their 30s on how to become insurance professionals and see people take to it. So if you take one thing away, remember they said they don't hire people from the insurance space, and then they work to train them their way. I think that that's a huge takeaway from this podcast. Thanks for joining the Ridiculously Amazing Insurance Agent Podcast, and we look forward to hearing you or seeing you on a future episode. So if you love what Randy and Marissa had to share, I want to give you two options to get exactly what they've been working hard on for the past couple years. We have our agency performance program, which is a 2-year commitment. Think about it. They've been doing this for 3 years. We have a 2-year commitment where we do an assessment, or sales training, or retention training, and time management. So in 2 years, you can get all that. But if that's maybe a little too much for you, we only work with teams that have at least 10 team members on that side. And we only allow 20 agents in that program. And currently we're over halfway sold. If that's too much for you, we then can look at our online school. It's all the same training Randy and Marissa mentioned, just you can pace yourself and you can do it on your own time. And even better, if you leave comments in the online school, we'll get back to you with answers. So you're not alone. Check it out. The online school is $245 a month. If you want to learn more about our program, if we still have spots open, contact us. We're happy to tell you more.